Welcome to the MVFC First Goal podcast. I'm Kelly Burke, and diving right in today with the new North Dakota State head football coach, Matt Entz. Coach, how are you this morning?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you.
Hard to believe, but you have now been in your new role at North Dakota State as the head coach for almost 6 months. So what's been a few of the biggest realizations so far?
Well, the biggest realization is the just day-to-day getting away a little bit from the football side of it, the X and O's, and having to get more involved with some of the off-field events, speaking engagements, golf outings, fundraising events that when I was just a defensive coordinator, I maybe attended but had less to do with the setup or maybe the program of that day.
You had said in your introductory presser that your goal for 20 years had been to be a head coach. And so now that it's a reality, how does it measure up to all that you'd envisioned over the last 20 years?
It's exactly what I was hoping it was going to be. Unbelievably excited to be the head football coach at a program like North Dakota State. Unbelievable, support not only from our community but our administrators. President Dean Bishani is a football person, football fan. I think that's critical with our program. But it's been enjoyable. We've got a great staff, and we're excited. We know the summer's going to go quick, and that season's going to be here before we know it.
What's been the part that you've enjoyed the most so far?
I think putting together a staff was enjoyable. Throughout my 25 years of college coaching, you create relationships with a number of different coaches, and probably in the back of your mind or on a piece of paper, maybe shoved in the back of your drawer, you're always, man, what ifs, and if I ever get to be a head coach, this is a guy I'd like to see, or here's another gentleman that I'd like to have on my staff. That was enjoyable, and to see that transition then with our players, I think was critical through spring ball. It was probably two of the more enjoyable parts so far of being the head football coach.
Speaking of the new staff members, so you have 5 new assistants, and then you have some guys that were on the pre-existing staff that are in a little bit different roles. So what's been the most important part about integrating everybody together, and especially learning the new coaching styles that have come aboard?
Well, I think the first thing that was probably the most important was making sure that as far as communicating within our staff, that there needed to be some consistency. And, we put it on our new coaches to learn our terminology rather than coming in here and trying to change terminology. We wanted to keep it consistent for our 110 players rather than change it for a couple coaches. That was probably the number one thing, but also to try to give our coaches some autonomy. Our new offensive coordinator has been here for a number of years. Tyler Roll has a great feel of what we've done offensively. And has some new ideas maybe on how we can tweak things or change things going into 2019. And my challenge for David Braun, who became our defensive coordinator, was first, allow yourself to learn what we do before you start trying to reinvent the wheel or to polish the wheel too much. I think it's critical. That's where I was, 5-6 years ago as a new D coordinator. It took me a little bit to have a great grasp of what we did defensively, and I needed to allow myself to learn it. And then to master it before I wanted to go in and start changing things.
You have a young team, and I think I heard you say it's sort of a race to maturity when you have a group like that. And so where did the biggest growing up come with that group in spring ball?
Well, I thought it came the last couple of weeks, probably the last 3 weeks of spring ball. One, they started to become more familiar with what we did offensively and defensively. You go back to the fall, a lot of these young kids that we're going to rely on next year were scout team guys. They were scout team members and did a great job, but they had moved away from our terminology. They moved away from our playbooks and were trying to represent the opponents. And so This spring it took a little bit of time to get them back into it. But I thought the last 3 weeks we started to create some really good depth on the defensive line. I like the back end of the defense and the secondary. I thought we did a nice job. Excited about our running backs. I think we have great tight ends coming back next year, and Coach Blazik did an excellent job with our offensive line. I think we feel comfortable to say that we're too deep there.
You've been the defensive coordinator previously for 5 years. So what's been the process of developing deeper relationships with your offensive players looked like off the field?
Well, just trying to have more communication. That's the number one thing, and get to know their story a little bit. For years I was tucked in the defensive staff room and worried about one side of the football and probably a little bit of the special teams. And even, to be honest, I probably watched very little offensive football even during games. It was always talking to our players, making sure that our adjustments were ready, our communication was right.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of growth. I've always had kind of an idea of what the plays were from a verbal standpoint, but now to understand how they all work together and try to give them a little bit of feedback on, hey, defensively, this is what we see, or how we would maybe counter that play.
Have you had that moment yet? Because now that you're almost 6 months in, I know it's just mass craziness the first couple of months trying to assemble the staff and, like you said, get to know the offensive players better and then getting ready for spring ball. But have you had that moment yet where you've sat back for a second, taken a deep breath, and just kind of had that aha moment, like, okay, wow, this is my life now, and this is what I had hoped for so long?
Well, the only moment that I can think of, our first day of spring ball, we Coach Kramer, our strength coach, warmed our guys up. They all went to their individual, and it was the first time in 5 years, or in probably 25 years, I was the only guy left in the middle. I didn't have a position group to go with, and so that was probably one of the moments where it was just different for me, and kind of a eye-opening moment where, I'm the head coach now. I don't have necessarily my hands in everything, but I do need to be aware of what's going on within the program.
Has it been hard to make that transition to where you're used to, being so involved in one specific area, and now you've sort of had to take a more broad approach to everything?
No, it hasn't been difficult. I've had to continually remind myself to back off and let our coaches coach. That's the number one reason why you hire these coaches, is because, one, you trust what they're going to do on the field. They're good teachers, and they have the same values as you do. So I'm excited with them. I need to continue to remind myself. But if I can make things behind the scenes work smoother for our assistants, then I think we're all getting, or we're becoming more an efficient program.
I was reading that you guys have, I guess it was a pre-existing policy that you've continued, but the players are not allowed to wear national championship apparel around campus. And that's something that's continued since you've taken over too. Why has that been such an important part of your program, kind of setting that precedent?
Well, I think it goes back to just staying humble and trying to, maintain that hungry desire to continue to improve. And a lot of times, if you're wearing those things, you start believing those things. We've tried to avoid that feeling that we've arrived, or, man, we are as a team, we've made it. We continually challenge our kids to find little things to continue to improve. And that's just one of the, maybe, some people might think it's kind of silly, but our kids, you never see it in the weight room. You rarely ever see anything like that around our offices. Maybe if you catch them off campus, they might have something on, but we're always concerned about the next year. The 2018 season was unbelievable and was one to remember, but it's all about 2019, and that's a different group of faces and people in that team right now, and that's the most important team that we have.
What's been the biggest thing that Chris Klieman taught you about running a successful football program?
That it's all about the players, and it's okay to love your players, and I think the players understand my connection to them. Having been here for a number of years, I've been here for as long as all these kids have been recruited, and have a good relationship with especially the defensive group more so, and trying to cultivate that relationship with the offensive guys. But you go as your players go in this profession, and I truly believe this is a player-driven program, and because of that, we've had a ton of success.
From observing you sort of from afar, since I don't live there in town, the one thing I've noticed is that you're a guy that really seems to kind of wear his heart on his sleeve. And so why does that ability to be vulnerable, especially with your players, really resonate as a head coach?
Well, I think they just know that you're real then, and they know that you're speaking from the heart when you address your players or address your staff. And I sometimes probably don't like that I have such a heart on my sleeve mentality or personality, but it's just the way I am, and people know that I care a ton about him.
Yeah. How often do you still talk to Coach Klieman?
Probably once a week or so.
Okay.
My son's actually going down to his football camp next
Oh,
weekend
nice.
down at Kansas State. So, no, our families stay in touch routinely.
Yeah. What was the most memorable part of your guys' visit to the White House earlier this spring?
Well, I think the number one thing that I would remember or think about is I probably had an expectation level that was high, and it just got blown out of the water. It exceeded my expectations, and with the president spending an hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes with the team, providing lunch right there in the White House. But also then allowing every member of the travel party to go into the Oval Office was outstanding. I mean, you think about just the other historical figures that have walked through the Roosevelt Room and into the Oval Office was surreal. To sit there and know that some of the greatest documents in the world have sat in that room, or the greatest people in the world have sat in that room as well.
Was the Oval Office part of it? Was that something that you guys knew going into it, that you were going to get access to that part of the White? Because that's not pretty typical that a team gets to actually go into the Oval Office.
No, that was a adjustment to the itinerary on the fly, and
Okay.
so we got to see the staff of the White House scramble
Nice.
right then to have everything prepared. But that was off the cuff, and it was a great day. And then the representatives from the state of North Dakota took unbelievable, great care of us throughout the day. We got to go into the Senate building. We went in the Capitol, had a tour, and it was an all around unbelievable 24 hours, really, because it was a 4 a.m. till about midnight type of day.
Wow. Your team, it's well traveled. You obviously, Frisco's like a second home for you guys. But what do you think it was about the trip to Washington that really resonated and stuck with the players?
Well, I think we had 108 players go, and everyone on the team went, and it was an outstanding experience. It was one of those opportunities where all our seniors from last year came back.
Nice.
So we got one last celebration for the 2018 team, but it was the kickoff for the Entz / 2019 team coming up, and I think that was anytime you can spend time with your teammates. You're going to become closer. You're going to get to know each other better. And I think both those things tend to lead towards better production.
What do you consider the biggest factor in developing Bison football players into championship caliber contenders?
Well, I think it's the young kids understanding and realizing what the expectations are here. And the sooner we can get young kids to buy in to some of the traditions and some of the expectations, the better experience they have. It's the few that come here with, thinking that football is going to give. Well, you got to give a little back to it as well. We pride ourselves on finding recruits that are 1, smart, 2, tough, and 3, athletic. And we need to find them in that order, because that's what it takes. We need guys who love football here. Everyone loves to play on Saturday, but we're looking for guys that appreciate the process of the hard work that goes into it.
Having said that, let's just take the last class of seniors that you were just talking about. You had a chance to come in with them when they were freshmen and watch them evolve and mature. And so how many of for example, that class really grew up before your eyes, maybe didn't come in with all the things, the mentality that you're talking about, but it evolved quickly?
A number of them did. I mean, you just look at, on defense last year, 2 of our seniors, Aaron Steidel and Levi Jordan, both came in as walk-ons. And at the end, they were captains. And they weren't walk-ons, of course, anymore. Those guys were on, full scholarships. And so you see from a developmental standpoint, athletic standpoint, and football understanding standpoint, those guys grew immensely. But there's other guys who come in and maybe have struggles in the academics or, because they're away from home. But it is fun to see them all transition and then to buy into what we're trying to do here at NDSU and then graduate at the same time.
What's the trait that you feel like the North Dakota State football staff has really cultivated that's most responsible for the program's ongoing success?
I want to say pride and conditioning. I think we have an unbelievable high level of pride within the program. And when I talk pride, I'm talking about understanding the history of the program, playing because of the guys who've played before us and the guys who will play in the future. But making it more important about the guy next to me than it is myself. And then I think what we do in the off season and in the weight room with Jim Kramer, our strength coach, separates us from most other teams in the country.
You hear so much about how you guys are a really process-oriented program, and that really defines Bison football. But what's unique specifically about your process compared to in other successful programs like Alabama or Clemson or say the New England Patriots or something like that?
Well, I think one of the ways we go about our practice structure, I think, is unique out there these days. We double rep at practice, and so we're having almost probably about 80% of our roster getting reps at the same time. Very little standing around at practice. And I think that does allow us, one, to continue to develop kids that are at a faster rate than maybe if they only had 3 or 4 snaps during the course of the day, but also keeps kids invested because they never know when I might be the next guy that, there's injuries in this game, and we've had our fair share of them. But I can think of the Easton Sticks, the Nick DeLucas, the guys who've had injuries in front of them on the depth chart and stepped up and had big games for us, made big plays for us, and allowed our program to continue to move forward.
How much do you think that impacts, it can be such a transfer-happy place in college athletics in general anymore, the fact that you guys are doing double reps, and so those players that maybe aren't going to see the field or see extensive playing time till they're a junior or senior, but they're staying with it. They're opting not to transfer because they maybe are seeing the reps in practice at least.
Well, I think there's a huge component of what you're talking about when the kids know that, one, the coaches have an investment in them and are creating a relationship with them, and there's value to yourself. Then why would you want to leave? But it's a transfer happy environment that we live in right now, or in college football, and we're fortunate that we don't deal with that very often. Our kids want to be here, they want to develop, and we're going to recruit. 99.9% of our kids are out of high school, and we're going to develop them and try to maximize their potential in 4 or 5 years.
How does your family, your wife, Brenda, and your sons, Kellen and Connor, shape your coaching style?
Probably with my boys, since when they were born, probably I looked at it as I want to be someone that I hope they would play for someday. Meaning I hope the things that I represent, my values, my work ethic, would be who they're looking to play for someday. So, and that probably hit me, when I became a dad, and then the job became a little bit more important. The development aspect of it. It wasn't all about the X's and O's.
Yeah.
If kids know that you care about them, they're going to give you a little bit more out there. And probably just, with my wife Brenda, she's unbelievably supportive. She does a lot of the little things that, as you can imagine, this job takes a lot of time. You're spending oodles of time raising and mentoring 100 other kids that sometimes you just aren't where you need to be all the time. And she does a great job of being supportive and keeping me, organized too, from that standpoint.
How do you measure success as a husband and father?
Probably just seeing my kids smile, seeing them enjoy life, seeing them be with their friends, little leadership things that I can notice. When they're, they're both baseball, basketball, football guys, but you can see them trying to cheer, give motivation to other people. I see that as positive. Doing well in the classroom without having to dad or mom, have to, push them along, but they see the importance of education.
You guys open the season at Target Field versus Butler on August 31st. And I know the Fargo Dome in itself is a special place to play, but what are you looking forward about the opportunity to play there in the Twin Cities?
Well, the Twin Cities are probably the home to as many alumni as there NDSU alumni as there is anywhere. And in the state of Minnesota has been so important to us from a recruiting standpoint for years. I think the last number I got, almost half our team is from the state of Minnesota. Mm. So this is going to be an unbelievable opportunity. A couple of weeks ago, we had a chance to go down and they honored us for winning the national championship And to see the stadium when it was only maybe half full, to know that this thing's going to be full of green and gold will be a special day, and one that I know a lot of Bison fans won't forget.
And you got to throw out the first pitch, correct?
I did. I did get to throw out the first pitch.
Was it a strike?
I might have been a little high, but it was at least over the plate, and he didn't have to leave. It was easily caught.
Okay. What did your boys say about it? Your son?
Dad, don't embarrass us, please.
Nice. Who were some influential coaches in your evolution, up the ladder? I know Bob Nielsen comes to mind as somebody that has made an impact on you.
Bob is an extremely important person in my life, and having the opportunity to play for him, worked with him for a year was unbelievably educational for me as far as my development goes. So, of course, Bob Nielsen was critical. Chris Klieman, the last 5 years working with him, but then we also had a relationship prior to that at another institution, and so that history goes back. Mark Farley, who's another Missouri Valley football coach, gave me my first opportunity at the FCS level, and so I do owe a lot to him as well. So I've been surrounded by great coaches my whole career, and I hope I can pay it forward by being a great head coach to some of these young coaches we have here.
How has your time, the stops you had briefly at Western and then obviously Northern Iowa, how has that helped you now at North Dakota State being in the Valley and coaching against those guys?
One, you have just great familiarity with everywhere you're going to go, travel-wise. You understand who you're recruiting against because you've just seen it. But at the same time, both those opportunities and positions there provided me with a ton of knowledge and background, so you can make some decisions here as a head coach, or you have some other thoughts, maybe other alternative or ways that I've seen it done before, and you can take the good and the bad and try to do it the best way that fits into the NDSU method. You're
very active on social media, and how has that evolved throughout the course of your career, and why do you feel that it's so important, especially in today's recruiting age?
Well, I think, in today's recruiting age, everything's a 30-second blur. And, that's the attention span that, unfortunately, I have two teenage boys. I see it every day. And I think that can grasp people. They see it. We can recruit a large group, and just by getting something out there on social media, we can keep our fans involved. We can keep all the recruits involved. We can keep our alumni involved because they like to follow kind of what we're doing from a recruiting standpoint. So we're just taking advantage of the tools that we have and trying to use social media in a positive aspect to reach our top recruits.
What are a few things that you've identified as the most important areas heading into the summer? I know you have limited contact, obviously, with the summer workouts and your players in that stretch.
Well, one, we got to continue, get stronger, injury prevention, and that'll be Coach Kramer, of course. But, I think from a football standpoint, we're going to have 25 freshmen come into Fargo this summer. And for those guys to be able to get acclimated, get transitioned into football, because there's going to be 2 or 3 of them in there that are going to be able to help us. And with this new redshirt rule and being able to play 4 games, I think it's critical that we can get a jump start on their development and see who can provide us with 4 games and who can provide us with even more games. So this summer will be critical for our young guys. And then with our captain's practice that our upperclassmen run is just keep the playbook, keep the play calls fresh. So when we get back into fall camp, we're not stepping backwards, but we're taking off from where we left off this spring. Will be critical, and to continue to always work on our communication and always continue to create depth.
I noticed in spring ball, one thing you really tried to cultivate is making guys comfortable with being uncomfortable. And is that something that you've really brought to the team, or is that something that has continually existed in this program?
I think it's continually existed in this program. And, just by providing a little adversity to our kids, we want Saturdays to be the easiest days of the week. Well, how do you do that? Well, you provide some adversity throughout the course of the week. And we did that by maybe moving a couple players around here or there. We tried some different position changes with some kids that were really good football players. Well, if when they're comfortable in their spot, how do you make them uncomfortable? Give them a new set of stimulus out there and make them see the game from a different position. And I thought it was positive for all the young men that we did that. But we needed to continue to grow, and we didn't want to go through the motions. And so that was kind of my thought process with keeping them uncomfortable throughout spring.
Tell me something that you are most looking forward to this summer unrelated to football.
Unrelated to football, probably the amount of baseball games that I'll get to go to. I played baseball through high school, kind of stepped away from it or got away from it because of the profession. And now I have two boys that play baseball. And so I've become a huge baseball fan again. And my oldest son is living a dream with how good the Twins are right now. Yeah. And but to get out and see those guys play and compete, I enjoy that. This will be the first summer that both my boys will be at football camp here at NDSU.
Nice.
So to have opportunity to see them grow and to go through those moments of being a young football player and improving your skill.
Finally, I wanted to ask you, what's a motto or a quote that you try to live by?
I think the one that people have seen is keep swinging. And I just, you got to keep going to work every day. There's going to be moments of adversity. You're going to get knocked down, but you got to get back up and keep moving forward. So that's probably, I think I got it from Matthew 7:7, a little scripture there. That was probably the one that stuck with me personally the longest.
Well, Coach, anything that you would like to add that I haven't asked you?
No, I appreciate it. You've been extremely thorough today. Ryan was sitting here. I didn't know what to expect with this interview today.
Yeah, I try and do my research, but well, I appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward. I know we have your guys' game for the Valley football broadcast when you go to Youngstown this year. So look forward to visiting more in person there.
Definitely, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.